Welcome to Everyday Musicality, the podcast in which we discuss all things related to Gordon's music learning theory and how it can help unlock the inner musician that lives inside of all of us. I'm your host, Heather Shouldice, music educator and faculty member for the Gordon Institute for Music Learning. In today's episode, we'll kick off a series that will answer the question, what is MLT? Starting with today's question, what is audiation? Hello and welcome to the Everyday Musicality podcast. I'm Heather Shouldice and I'm thrilled to start digging into the meat of MLT with this first series of episodes. Before we begin, I'd like to share that this podcast is sponsored by GIA Publications, publisher of many MLT-related materials, including my upcoming book tentatively titled Weaving It All Together, a practical guide to applying Gordon's music learning theory in the elementary general music program. Subscribe and keep listening to this podcast for a chance to enter upcoming giveaways and hear reviews of MLT-related materials, starting with our very first giveaway, which I will be announcing at the end of this episode. So the purpose of this first series of episodes is to give an overview of the core tenets that are at the heart of MLT. But first of all, what is MLT? As I mentioned in the pilot episode, MLT is a theory about how we learn when we learn music. It was developed by Edwin E. Gordon, informed by his experiences as a professional bass player, and then his decades of work in music education, including teaching, research, and observation of young children and students in schools. Hopefully in a future episode, we can look a bit more at Gordon's life and the evolution of MLT. For now, we're just going to look at the ideas of the theory itself. Now, you may have heard some people refer to MLT as the Gordon method, but this is not accurate. MLT is not a method. Gordon was adamant about this. In one of his final keynote addresses at the International Conference on Music Learning Theory, he stressed repeatedly that MLT is not a method. A method is a series of sequential objectives that tells a teacher what to teach and in what order to teach it. MLT does not specifically prescribe what should be taught and when it should be taught. Instead, the focus of MLT is on how we learn music. You can develop a method using the theoretical framework of MLT, and in fact, there are already several published methods based on MLT. These include Jump Right In the Music Curriculum for elementary general music, Jump Right In the Instrumental Series for beginning band, string, and recorder instruction, and Music Moves for piano. However, these are only 3 possibilities. The concepts and the framework of MLT can give rise to an infinite number of teaching methods. And I firmly believe each MLT practitioner should feel empowered to create their own unique method based on MLT. Quick side note, future giveaways of materials from our sponsor, GIA Publications, will include Jump Right In the Music Curriculum and Jump Right In the Instrumental Series. So stay tuned to this podcast for your chance to win those free materials. Okay. So if MLT is not a method, then what is it? I think of MLT as a collection of ideas that attempts to explain music learning and musical development. At its core, music learning theory comprises and combines knowledge of audiation, sequential learning, and music aptitude. This initial series of podcast episodes will give you an overview of each of these core tenets of MLT: audiation, music aptitude, and sequential music learning. My goal is to make these episodes approachable and easily digestible for the MLT newbies, but if you're an MLT veteran, don't stop listening. I'm also hoping these initial episodes will provide a nice booster shot of information for you and that they can help you distill the essence of MLT down so that you can more effectively communicate it to others. The core tenet of MLT that we will explore in this episode is audiation, because developing audiation is the primary goal of MLT. So what is audiation? Audiation is a word created by Gordon to mean thinking in music. He found that there was really no existing word to describe what he was talking about, so he created one. Gordon based it on the word ideate, meaning to have an idea or to think. Then he added the prefix aud, relating to sound, from the Latin for to hear. In combining these two parts, aud and ideate, Gordon smashed them together and came up with the word audiate. So if ideation pertains to thinking, Audiation means thinking in musical sounds. Gordon often used the analogy that audiation is to music what thought is to language. Interestingly, the Gordon Institute for Music Learning, or GIML, an organization for those interested in MLT, publishes a journal called Audia, which gets its name from a variant of the word audiation. If an idea is a thought in language, then an audia is a musical thought. Technically, Gordon defined audiation as when we hear and comprehend music for which sound is not physically present. A lot of people mistakenly use the word audiation as a synonym for inner hearing or silently singing a song in your head. However, there is more to audiation than mere inner hearing. Let's do a little experiment. I'm going to play a recording of someone reciting a haiku in Japanese.
古い池や河津飛び込む水の音
Now, let's listen again, but this time there's going to be silence after each line of the haiku. During that silence, try to echo what the speaker has just said.
古い池や河津飛び込む水の音
Now I'm going to play that same audio again, and this time I'd like you to try hearing the echo silently in your mind after each line instead of speaking the echo out loud.
古い池や河津飛び込む水の音
So were you able to inner hear each line of the haiku that time? Probably. But what do those sounds mean? Unless we speak Japanese, we don't know. Even though we could inner hear the sounds, we still had no comprehension of those sounds. Similarly, you can inner hear music without comprehending the sounds you are inner hearing. This actually happens a lot in school music programs. As Gordon describes on page 9 of his 2012 edition of Learning Sequences in Music, just as you can learn to say nonsense syllables such as a, va, di, or repeat a sentence in a foreign language and not give meaning to what you are saying, children can learn to sing a song by rote without giving it musical meaning. That is, without understanding context or content of the song. So, similarly, it's possible to inner hear both language and music sounds without giving them meaning. People who use the terms audiation and inner hearing interchangeably are missing a key part of the definition of audiation that distinguishes it from inner hearing. Audiation is the hearing and comprehension of music in the mind. Now, comprehension does not mean that a person needs to have the ability to label musical concepts or explain them in theoretical terms. Rather, comprehension means a sense of tonal and rhythm syntax. Like language, music has syntax, which Gordon refers to as an orderly arrangement of sounds within a given context. Most of us are already familiar with the idea of language syntax. For example, this like talk don't we. Just then, it was probably difficult for you to discern that I tried to say we don't talk like this because I didn't use proper syntax when I said those words. I didn't arrange my words in the expected way. Now, no one teaches us the order in which we should put our words when we learn our native language. We just develop a sense of syntax through listening to other people speaking day in and day out and experimenting with our own speech sounds. Similarly, by hearing and interacting with enough musical sounds, we begin to develop a sense of tonal syntax and rhythm syntax in particular musical contexts, such as major tonality, duple meter, and so on. It is important to note again that audiation of context does not require the ability to describe or label phenomena such as meter or tonality. Similar to the way a young child can speak with proper syntax without knowing what a noun or verb is, we can audiate even if we do not have formal words to explain what we are comprehending. For example, if you were audiating tonally, you could sense that what you just heard sounded unfinished. Even if you had never studied music theory or had never learned the labels tonic, subdominant, or dominant, if you sense that the music wanted to go back to, you were demonstrating some degree of tonal audiation. This brings us to another feature of audiation, and that is that it enables us to make musical predictions. Again, let's use language as an example. As you're listening to me speak, you're recognizing and processing my words, thinking about what they're communicating, relating this to your prior knowledge and experiences, and if you're truly understanding me, then you should be able to predict what I'm about to. You were probably able to fill in that blank with a word or phrase that made sense, right? That's because your comprehension allowed you to make a prediction. The same thing happens musically when we're audiating. When you listen to a piece of music, you process the musical sounds you're hearing, make sense of them through the lens of all your prior musical experiences, and if you're audiating, you should be able to make a prediction about where the music might go next. Let's try another experiment. I'm going to sing a tune that has 4 short phrases, but instead of singing the 4th phrase, I would like you to try making up an ending to my song. Let's try it. Ya-da-da-da-da-da-dum. Here is my song. Ya-dum, ba-dum, ya-da-dum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ya-da-dum, bum, ba-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-dum, ya-da-dum, bum. Were you able to make up an ending to my song? If so, what enabled you to do that? Did I explicitly tell you what meter and tonality my song was in and tell you that you should be in the same meter and tonality? Did I tell you I ended on an implied dominant chord, so you should start on an implied dominant and end on the tonic? Obviously I didn't. But if you were audiating, you sensed those things intuitively. You may not have even been consciously thinking about things like tonality, meter, or chord progression, but your audiation allowed you to subconsciously process those aspects of the musical syntax and context in my song and enabled you to predict an ending that would make musical sense. When we discuss audiation and skill development through an MLT lens, we typically focus on audiation of tonal context, tonal patterns, rhythmic context, and rhythm patterns. Thus, tonal and rhythm skills tend to get a lot of focus in MLT-related discussions. However, we can also audiate other dimensions of music, such as tone quality, chord progressions, form, style, expression, and timbre, all of which are important for a well-rounded music education. Gordon has written extensively about audiation, including theorizing about various types and stages through which it occurs. They're beyond the scope of today's episode, but I'm hoping we can do more of a deep dive into the types and stages of audiation in a future episode of this podcast. In the meantime, you can read more about the types and stages of audiation in Chapter 1 of Gordon's book, Learning Sequences in Music, if you are so inclined. So, why does audiation matter? It matters because there's more to music than merely perceiving sound. In Gordon's words, sound itself is not music. Sound becomes music through audiation when, as with language, we translate sounds in our mind and give them meaning. That's from page 3 of Gordon's book, Learning Sequences in Music, the 2012 edition. Because audiation allows us to create musical meaning, audiation gives us the power to make sense of music in any and every kind of musical interaction that we might have in our daily lives, including listening, performing, creating, and reading or writing music notation. Instead of merely imitating or recognizing music, audiation allows us to truly understand music, and it enables the possibility for us to speak music, to sing, chant, play an instrument, improvise, as fluently as we speak our native language. Audiation allows us to not just reproduce the music of others, but to have and express our own musical thoughts. In Gordon's words, when you are able to audiate, music becomes your property. When we perform or memorize our own specific part of a piece of music, it allows us to engage in that one musical experience of performing that specific piece. Audiation, however, enables a lifetime of musical experiences. In our next episode, we'll look at the second core tenet of MLT, music aptitude. What is it? Who has it? And why does it even matter? Before I end this episode, I'm excited to announce our first giveaway from our sponsor, GIA Publications. They've recently come out with a brand new book by Dr. Jill Reese, another faculty member of the Gordon Institute for Music Learning, and her book is called Navigating Music Learning Theory, a Guide for General Music Teachers. If you would like to enter to win a copy, post a picture on social media with a description of why you love teaching with MLT with the hashtags Everyday Musicality Podcast and GIA Publications. Again, if you want to enter to win a copy of Jill's book, then please post a picture on social media with a description of why you love teaching with MLT or why you're glad you discovered MLT, and add the hashtags Everyday Musicality Podcast and GIA Publications. In the meantime, if you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future episodes, please get in touch. You can email me or send me a voice memo at everydaymusicality@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening, and let's keep musicking every day.